This might sound confusing. It's like I got this Jew thing in my mind saying it's almost Friday night. And they're gonna stay. The Jews are gonna pray. I'm just gonna take. I'm taking off. I'm just on a break. They might try to fake. I'm just gonna take.
Welcome to Amusing Jews, where we celebrate Jewish contributors and contributions to American popular culture. I'm Jonathan Friedman.
And I'm Joey Angelfield.
Producer-engineer Mike Tomrin is working somewhere behind the scenes. Amusing Jews is a project of Adat Chaverim, Congregation for Humanistic Judaism, the Cool Shul Jewish Cultural Community, and Atheists United Studios. Hey, Joey. Pop music's impact is undeniable. Whether it's shaping fashion trends, challenging social norms, introducing lingo, or inspiring listeners in different ways, the mixture of music, lyrics, image, and marketing is a driving force in our culture and has been ever since Jewish songwriter Charles K. Harris wrote the first million-seller song, 1892's sappy tearjerker, After the Ball.
After the ball is over, after the break of morn, after the dancers leaving, after the stars are gone.
Today, there's probably no greater musical force than Taylor Swift, something our guest knows a lot about.
We're delighted to talk with Dalilah Bernier, Director of Teen Initiatives for Milwaukee Jewish Federation's Coalition of Jewish Learning. She's the co-creator of the educational program, the Torah of Taylor Swift, which uses the pop star as a way into Jewish texts. Dalilah, welcome to Amusing Jews.
Thanks, Joey. I'm excited to be here.
You're an outspoken Taylor Swift fan, as many people are. What drew you to her music?
I was actually a little late. Well, as far as Swifties go, because they're like very competitive. When I was in I think third grade, there was some girl that I really wanted to be friends with. And I don't know, we were talking about what we did over the weekend. And this girl was like, I listened to Taylor Swift all weekend. And I had never heard of her, but I was like, I want to be her friend. So I'm going to listen to Taylor Swift all weekend. So that girl and I did not actually become friends, but I got something better out of it, which was some new music to listen to. But truthfully, I wasn't really hooked on her music until her first album came out. I don't know the order. Well, I know the order, I just don't know the numbers. But Reputation, it came out when I was in college, so I don't want to age myself, but it was while I was in college. And a friend, she actually got her hands on a pirated version of the album before it dropped. And so because it was something that was, I don't know, a little sinister of us, we listened to it in the car and I was invested. I later learned that was really not good of us to do, as Taylor also learned when she re-recorded her music. So actually we were the problem, but yeah, so don't do that. But yeah, I felt really invested in that album, specifically from there. And then I was kind of in for good. I was I felt like a grassroots supporter, even though I wasn't.
And I'm assuming that since then you bought your legitimate copy of Reputation?
Oh yeah, I have the actual albums and a record player. I didn't have a record player before Taylor Swift, and maybe that is aging myself, actually. But that's fine.
Well, as you're alluding to, Taylor Swift has a huge and incredibly dedicated fan base. As early as 2012, she observed that fans were calling themselves Swifties, and she trademarked that term in 2017. In your view, what accounts for her fans' unusual loyalty?
People are so loyal because they grew up with her, right? The first time I heard her music, I was in third grade. So she has really grown, even though she's older than the people that were in third grade when her music came out. She's stayed so relevant during the most transformational part of like childhood or like early adulthood. And so like if you had a first love at the same time when Taylor dropped a album about her first love, like it feels like she's speaking to you, like it's relatable, right? You have your first heartbreak. Taylor also has a song for that. You, I don't know, have to be resilient. Taylor has a whole album for that, you know? So like she really has a song for everything. And also I think that like the way that her lyrics are relatable in a way that I don't think most people can articulate. I think that the associations that people can build with their personal experiences can really tie their memories to music, and make them feel really attached to the stuff that she's creating, and also just like her as like an icon. And also she has a really kick-ass marketing team, which I feel like it certainly doesn't hurt. And I think that that's like a result of the loyalty, right? Like people will buy anything that has her name on it.
She also comes off as nice. You know, there's something to be said for a non-controversial star as well.
Yeah, and I think that she's tactful about that. I mean, even at her concerts, like I imagine she can only see the first 3 rows or something from the stage just because of all the lights and everything. But I feel like every time she's like, "Oh my gosh, you all are here for me. You shouldn't have." Like as if she's not like the biggest thing in like the world right now. So yeah, I think that she does, I mean, at least pretend to stay humble. But I also think that like through the vulnerability that she shows through her music, she does illustrate that she's not so different from everyone else.
Enjoying the show? Click like and subscribe. Taylor Swift isn't Jewish, of course, but she has many Jewish fans. For her tour in 2022, she added weekday concerts to accommodate observant Jewish fans who were disappointed that the initial dates coincided with Shabbat. Are you in touch with this Jewish Swiftie subculture?
She doesn't really ever like publicly acknowledge any group ever. So people just assume that she's on their side, which is great for her. And also like allows for people to pretty universally like her. I mean, I actually will say that when I went to see her in June in Chicago, that was, I think, like the first show that she did during Pride Month. And like she did say something about like everyone should love everybody. And, you know, when it comes to like voting, she'll say like everyone should get out to vote, but she won't say who she's supporting. So she is really tactful, I think, about that. And so like in terms of that move, I was really impressed with like that decision to do weekday concerts, but I don't think she ever like explicitly said this one's for the Jews, you know? But it did feel like nice to be accommodated for in that way, I guess. But also like, I think that her fan base is just so big that there's so many intersections, right? Like the Venn diagram has many circles. So I feel like Jews have just like kind of leaned into it. And, you know, that can make Jewish education like, I mean, as we'll talk about later, I'm sure, just like kind of meet more individuals where they're at culturally, musically, in any kind of variety of what they're into other than her music or in addition to her music.
Yeah, along those lines, The Forward, a leading Jewish publication, has a bunch of articles on Taylor Swift, ranging from silly ones like 10 Jewish women badder than Taylor Swift, to more unfortunate ones like neo-Nazis blame the Jews for Taylor Swift endorsing Democrats, to incidental ones like Taylor Swift bodyguard to enter a new era in a tour with the IDF. Other Jewish news outlets are likewise saturated with Swift stories. Is there something about her that appeals specifically to these publications, or is it merely a testament to her ubiquity in the culture?
I think like anyone and everyone is trying to utilize her branding for their product just so that people will pay more attention to what they have to offer. And so like if that supports their cause, cool, go for it. It's applicable, right? Like I think even with this most recent album, I feel like I saw like Scrub Daddy and Lyft like make album covers that like looked like her album for their branding. It's kind of gotten out of control, but also when I see that, I'm like, ooh, that's cool, the Scrub Daddy, you know? And like also like even TSA, which is like a literal government agency, made like something about traveling. Oh, I think it's like to Florida, which is one of her tracks. They used her branding to promote their, you know, PSA. So literally everything she touches turns to gold. And so I think that's why people are utilizing her in this way. But I also think that like Jewish learning is no exception because I'm just as guilty of it as they are.
As you've alluded to, you've developed a teen program called the Torah of Taylor Swift. This is obviously a way to relate to young Jews who are already fans of the singer, but is there more to it than that?
I, as a Jew that also liked Taylor Swift, I was like, oh, this is something like if I was a student, I would really like to see. So, and then I had a student when I was working at Hillel who also thought it would be really cool. So she and I developed the original program for students for Taylor's re-report of Red. And then that took off. And then another Hillel Pro Swiftie reached out to me asking about my source sheet and said that she was thinking about making another program similar for the newer album at the time, which was Midnight. And so as she and I were getting into it, I was like, wait, this is genius. Like, I want to be a part of this. And so we ended up building it together and offering it at Hillel International's Global Assembly in 2022 for other Hillel pros. And so a lot of people that were in attendance wanted to bring it to their campuses for their students. So we offered the resource to anyone that wanted it and just like published the source sheet. And then it spread to summer camps. I had like so many people asking for my source sheet in like late May, early June. And like, of course, educators have modified it since. And like, I think that's the dream, right? Like people have really, really expanded upon it. Someone made a Era's Tour source sheet. I thought that was so clever. And I mean, honestly, like whatever allows young people to engage with Torah outside of their like synagogue walls, I think it's a win. Especially if it's like relatable and it's something like, oh my gosh, I really want to go to Torah study. It just happens to have a Taylor Swift spin on it. And like, if that's what gets them in, cool. But another former Hillel pro that actually has attended the session when I taught it initially, like really took the concept and like evolved it so much. She's made a Taylor Swift Omer calendar, a Taylor Swift, like a Torah of Taylor Swift, or it's Jewish Swiftie on Instagram. So much content since then. And so like I've been really proud to see all the ways that it's evolved and just seeing people like apply their creativity to it.
It sounds like the Torah of Taylor Swift is quickly developing into the Talmud of Taylor Swift.
Very true. I think we'll see. I mean, like, I think it'll never be a bunch of old men making rules, but like, I think interpretations are always welcome. But at least we have the original author to prove or disprove things.
Well, could you give us an example of how you use Taylor Swift's music to examine a section of the Torah?
The one that I alluded to before for Midnights, we used the track Antihero, which is essentially, it's about Taylor sometimes being her worst enemy and like thinking so little of herself and just like all these ideas being in her head. So we juxtaposed it to Vayishlach, how Yaakov gets in a bit of a struggle with an angel. The angel blesses him and then his name changes to Israel and he moves on. He goes on his way, right? So there is Midrash, or just like a few people who have suggested that perhaps that angel was not an angel. Perhaps it was also Jacob. Like maybe he had a dream in which he was wrestling with himself and then he became blessed and he went on his way, right? So we took those two texts and we explored the possibilities that could exist within them in terms of like, what if we are sometimes our own worst enemies, and like, what could it look like if we were our own biggest cheerleaders instead? And so it was a really, really nice way to allow people to do like some self-discovery, but also in this room of Hillel pros to talk about like, sometimes in your students' minds, you can't do anything right. But if you can be really proud of yourself for something, then you're so much better for it. But if you keep knocking yourself down, then it's not helping anyone.
Yeah, that sounds really powerful. The idea of blessing oneself or positive self-speak, particularly with the vulnerable age groups that you're dealing with, and finding the connection between, the ancient story and the new music. It sounds like there's a lot of possibility there.
For sure. I actually, more recently, I led it at a BBYO convention with high schoolers. And I was a little nervous, like I wasn't sure how it would go. But they actually got super vulnerable, like almost to the point of oversharing, as teenagers sometimes do, about their depression and their anxiety. And I don't know how many spaces they've had where they can like actually openly talk about it. So it actually was really nice. And some of them were like, oh my gosh, like this was my bat mitzvah portion. I never thought about it this way. So it was really cool to see them engage with it in that way. And I hope that they continue to have more conversations about it, especially with this new album that came out and all the different iterations that it could have.
On that note, how do you like the new album, the TTPD, Tortured Poets Department?
So initially, I wasn't really sure. I also feel like sometimes when these albums drop, like it's midnight, like everyone's like, oh my gosh, like I have to listen to it all in one night, but like also I'm falling asleep. And also all these songs kind of sound the same. And it's like become this thing where you like kind of have to cram for it. And so I try like not to have an impression of it until I've like given it a few listens. So initially, like I did think all the songs sounded the same. I thought it was like, I thought that maybe it would have been better in writing than it was in song, because the lyrics are really, really good and like they're poetic, and like some of them do kind of seem like she like wrote a song and then gave it to someone who threw a thesaurus at it and then said, okay, now publish it, right? Like there's like such big words in it, like soliloquies. I don't know anyone that uses that word conversationally. So it's definitely not like the upbeat poppy stuff that she used to do. But I think that actually makes it so much better. And also Merriam-Webster was part of that branding debacle with the album. They were like, you're going to need this for this album. And they were right. But anyway, I think it's really, really good. Lyrically, like, there's so much to unpack. Like, if you decide to interpret it one way, it can change the whole song, the whole album. I also think it's really funny that, like, in this album, she's kind of gotten, like, on the level with her fans where she can be, like, punchy and joke with them. Like, in one track where she, like, obviously, like, capitalizes certain letters of the title. Like, everyone knows what it's about based on those letters. It's about Kim Kardashian. And then she, like, pretends that she's being sly and, like, alluding to her, like, tactfully. And she, like, says, like, you guys will never guess. Like, no one will ever know who this song's about. And she made it obvious, you know? And then, like, in another track, like, she says, like, I'm having his baby. No, I'm not. But you should see your faces right now. Because she knows that, like, her fans hang on every word. I just think that that's so funny. I love that, like, she's gotten to that point where she can be vulnerable and, like, funny, and people will just roll with it, you know?
Sounds like a concept album. And, you know, forgive me, Dalilah and Swifties in our audience, but I'm not that acquainted with Taylor Swift myself.
That's okay.
Is this something that she's done before in terms of, like, a fully realized conceptual album?
Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes people didn't realize it until later, right? Like, I think that she actually kind of had, like, a resurgence. And not that she, like, ever was unpopular, but, like, she has had some controversy surround her. And then that's why she released Reputation, about people trying to ruin her reputation. So in that comeback, I think that's when her vulnerability started. And then people, like, started to dissect her older lyrics. And she was like, oh, like, this is about this X, and, like, this is what the scarf represents. And, you know, I think that maybe there was, like, some retroactive digging that happened. But again, like, she never actually admits anything, right? Like, she'll say, however you interpret it, you're right. So,
well, and in that sense, it's sort of like the ancient text of the Torah as well, which really doesn't interpret itself. It does require readers, you know, now thousands of years later, to try to figure out what it means. So in a way, the same tools that you're developing to interpret her songs, you can also use to interpret the Torah, and vice versa. And it sounds like you're onto something.
For sure. I mean, I always knew that was a skill that I had. I never really knew how to apply it. Like, I don't know, sometimes I would, like, draw parallels between, I don't know, like, for a while, I had a theory that Moana was actually about Moses. I let that one go. It was a bit of a stretch. But, like, I tend to draw connections between things that, like, aren't really connected pretty often. And so Torah and like especially this album, which I'm really excited about, have just kind of lent themselves to that. So I'm glad to be able to apply myself in a way that feels productive and fun.
So I know that a lot of the appeal of Taylor Swift, especially these days, is the concert-going experience. But then you're also talking about how you need to listen to a track or an album over and over and over. Are these distinct kind of experiences in your mind, or do they feed into each other? What's your kind of go-to Taylor Swift exposure?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially because I have a story. Initially, I like tried to get tickets to the Eras tour like desperately, and I was, driving with like 2 laptops. It was crazy. Probably not safe also. And like to no avail. I didn't end up getting them, but I ended up being identified by Ticketmaster as someone that should have but didn't. So I got put in like a lottery. It was crazy. When I found out that I didn't get them, I was like, okay, like I guess I'll staff Birthright because it's like one last hurrah as part of my job. And then I got put in this lottery and then I got tickets. So I was like, sorry, Birthright, like been there, done that. This is probably more of a once in a lifetime opportunity than staffing Birthright again. So instead of going to Israel, I went to Chicago. And I would say that it was well worth it. And honestly, like when I rewatched the videos that I took, not necessarily the videos that I took of the stage, because I think that those are like a dime a dozen. Like there are literally a million people that go and they all have their phones out. But like, I think just like me singing with my friends, like, and also hearing the live versions, I think that is so incomparable. But like, you can try to replicate it and it doesn't work. Like just this past week, my friend and I went to a album release listening party that was at some like venue. And honestly, like having heard the album, I was like, okay, great. Like this is going to be really chill. Everyone's going to be like sitting on the floor and crying. Like it's going to be a great time. Because the other ones were like dance parties and it just wasn't that kind of album, right? And that was not the case. Like people went all out. Like I saw like a 7-year-old that was wearing like an exact replica of one of Taylor's outfits. Like it was insane. And people were still like dancing and singing to all the words. And this was the day after the album came out. I was like, don't you people have jobs? Like, how do you know all these words already? It was crazy. So I think that there are definitely people who live for the in-person experience, whether it be a concert or a listening party with other fans. But I think that I prefer to have a bit of a one-on-one experience with the album to be able to really understand it and dissect it and feel comfortable in public singing the words and actually knowing them and not just pretending to. But I think to each their own. I think if I had that opportunity now, I would definitely be more into it, but I think I would still want to sit on the floor and cry.
Talking about like the concert going experience, did you also see the movie experience of the Eras tour, on display in theaters?
For sure. And actually, ironically, it like came out pretty soon after October 7th. And so my friend and I were like, oh, we really need this. Like it was a very cathartic experience to just like sit in a dark theater and be able to listen to and sing along to music that you grew up with when the world was simpler. But I also said to actually that same friend that I wish that I could swap the movie experience with the like listening party thing that we went to and be able to dance around in a big like empty room to the movie and sit in a dark theater for the new album. I feel like that would have been much more appropriate. But there were people that were like dancing around the theater, and I think that Taylor actually like came and surprised people at one of the showings. Yeah. That's crazy. That did not happen to me. But it was really great, I think, especially because, of course, when it's a movie, the cameras can get angles that you can't even come close to getting when you're seeing her in person, even though there's like the screens and everything. So it was really cool to like see a different perspective on the concert. I wouldn't say that it was the same as being there, but I think given how difficult it was for people to get tickets, it was a really nice, more inclusive experience for people to have, so that it would be almost like being there.
So I hear you, talking about how other people are taking it and running with it. Do you have any plans to expand or deepen your work on Taylor Swift?
So yeah, so others definitely have. And honestly, like I've kind of enjoyed like sitting back and watching all the ways that their creativity has driven this concept in directions I never really imagined. And not that I ever saw it as like a one and done kind of thing, but I definitely didn't see myself creating it like, the Talmud of Taylor Swift. Oh my gosh. From that. But I definitely do hope to collaborate with some of the people that have expanded it. To, I don't know, maybe be like a guest star in the new season. I don't know, the ways that they've developed. And so I actually did reach out to the person that has the Jewish Swiftie Instagram account, and I was like, hey, like, if you'll have me, I would love to collaborate on a tech study for the new album.
Thank you, Dalilah, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This has been so much fun.
And to our audience, now back to your regularly scheduled lives.
Amusing Jews is here to amuse you. If you like being amused, go ahead and click like and subscribe.